This is the DJI Spark, the cheapest drone that DJI makes, and for most people, this is probably as good of a drone as you will ever need to get. It offers most of the features of its bigger brothers in a package that is less than half the price of them. But for that cut down price, you lose a couple of useful features, and it's the absence of those that really leave me a little bit unsure about this drone. The design of Spark is great. It's a sleek looking drone that clearly doesn't compromise on durability. Its build feels great with premium feeling plastic covering the entire body. It is slightly heavier than you'd expect for a plastic build, and whilst this doesn't help with flight times, it actually does make the drone feel less like a toy and more like a pro device. Underneath the motors are coloured LEDs which serve as indicator lights for GPS, flight modes and connection status, whilst also making the drone look pretty cool. It makes it easier for you to see the drone if you fly at night, not that you should, but they also give a clean aesthetic to the drone that it otherwise wouldn't have. Around the back we have the Microusb port for charging and the micro SD card slot, and that is it for the I/O. The Microusb serves no other function than charging for the drone, but I'm sure that it has some diagnostic function if you send your drone into DJI for repairs. Without the battery installed, you realise how small the internal technology has to be, and that is one of the reasons why some of the features are probably lacking here, but it makes sense for the size. The battery serves not only as the power button, but also as a pairing or mode button, which can enable the hand tracking mode or pair a new controller to the drone. And if you're planning on getting a Spark, then I would definitely recommend picking up a couple of these batteries, because their capacity is only 1480 mAh, and my maximum flight time that I've achieved is 13 minutes, and that 13 minutes does go by pretty quickly, so I would definitely recommend picking up a couple so that you can stay in the air for longer. The propellers on this drone fold up, which is great for storage, but it also allows some dampening for crashes, and it'll probably prevent them from snapping too easily. They're locked in through a spring-loaded mechanism, so removing or attaching them is pretty easy. Around the front of the drone is where the main components live. The sensor bar houses the obstacle sensors, which essentially make this drone impossible to crash forwards into things. Provided you're in GPS mode, the drone will stop itself even if you keep pushing it forwards on the sticks. The bar also houses these sensors for gesture control, which I think is more of a gimmick than anything. Underneath the sensor bar is the 2-axis gimbal, and this is probably the most lacking part of the drone. Now don't get me wrong here, it is not terrible by any means, but DJI have withheld some of the features that I would really like to have seen for the more expensive drones. And the most noticeable absence here is the yaw axis stabilization, so you definitely don't notice it in photo mode, but when in video mode it creates this jumpy, rough looking footage. If you're gentle you can get a smooth curve, but in wind it just looks unprofessional. The roll and tilt stabilization is great, and you definitely don't see propellers anywhere in video mode, it's just the yaw axis that has problems. The camera on Spark can shoot up to 1080p at 30 frames a second with no other video or even frame rate options. It's decent enough bitrate footage at 24 megabits per second, but it's definitely not the best thing you'll ever see. There are options for manual ISO and shutter speed settings, but I find it better to use auto mode because most drone shots have an exposure change at some point. Now the video isn't the best that you'll ever see, but for the price and the size of the drone it's decent enough. Sure, the Mavic Air can shoot much better video quality, but it's also double the price of the Spark. Comparing it to the A-roll which I'm shooting on my Lumix G7, it does look a little bit softer definitely, but remember you are watching 1080p in a 4K timeline. But I've managed to make the most of this camera through my use, and the footage is totally usable for vlogs or basically any other type of YouTube content. Photos from Spark are actually really great. You've got 12 megapixel wide angle photos that are rich in detail and colour accuracy, and have a level of sharpness that doesn't look artificial. You have up to 3 frames a second photo shooting, which I haven't found a use for yet, but it is definitely nice to have. I think with just a little editing, the photos that you can get from the Spark can match the photos of the Mavic Pro or even the Mavic Air, with the only problem here being the lack of raw image shooting, which can restrict your editing ability. But I can look past that for the price that you pay. Now what a lot of reviewers don't remember is that this is not a pro level drone. This is made for casual or hobby use. And if you think of it like that, then this drone is completely awesome. Initially I only bought the drone only kit, and I only got the controller back in June, and what a difference it makes. For the first few months I was using this drone with the Wi-Fi control through my phone, and that's probably the worst way to use it. The range is limited by your phone's Wi-Fi abilities, so after about 30 meters it drops signal and lands itself. But with a controller I've been able to get up to 600 meters away at 120 meter height before it drops signal. But range is not the only bonus that you get here. You have a physical control surface with dedicated buttons that will give you an unmatched experience. So yes, you've got your 2 physical sticks, which alone is just far superior to the touchscreen controls, but you also get a dedicated video and photo button, 2 custom function buttons, a dedicated return to home button, and a gimbal tilt control and a pause button. And all of those paired with your phone as a live view monitor create a simple but intuitive live view experience that gives you all the data that you'll possibly need whilst you're flying. You'll notice on the bottom of the controller that there's a Microusb port, and until recently you weren't able to use the port to connect the controller to your phone, which limited your video stream quality and shortened the range. But the recent updates on the app actually allow you to plug your phone directly into the controller with an on-the-go cable, and the difference this makes is huge. The video clarity doesn't change throughout, and the latency is just so much lower. In the middle of the controller there is the sport mode switch, which disables the object sensing and enables a speed of up to 12 meters a second, which is just insane. It has no practical use case whatsoever, but it is just fun to use. The radio controller gives you so much more control over what the drone does. You can have it moving forward whilst tilting up and down, which you couldn't do if you were on the phone alone. And as you saw in the opening of this video, it can create some decent looking shots. Most of getting cinematic shots with the drone is down to the piloting skills you have. And whilst it may take a while to get used to, the Spark can capture some awesome looking footage. And I guess that's probably the main point with this drone. So if you know how to create cinematic looking footage with a drone, then it doesn't matter what drone you're really using as long as you know how to fly. Sure, it's lacking advanced video settings, a third axis of video stabilization, raw photos, and the battery life isn't all that great, but I still love this drone. I didn't buy it expecting pro level features, but it definitely exceeded my expectations in what it can do. For casual use on YouTube, for things like vlogs or just little cinematics, for anything that isn't pro level work, the Spark will suit you fine. This is probably the best drone under £500.